family resolute on this matter. You all may recall when this matter first started breaking, the public information officer suggested that the officer shot Terence Crutcher because he reached inside the car. That was the narrative that they put out before we saw the video. And even yesterday, some representatives put forth that she shot because he reached inside the automobile. You all see him walking with his hands up. He's walking slowly. He's not threatening to anyone. He is daylight. They have several officers on the scene, and they could have easily resolved this matter with less than lethal force. And Attorney DeMario Solomon Simmons will talk to you about that in just a second. But what we want to draw to your attention is this whole notion that he was reaching into the car. Well, the good thing about video is it is objective, it's nonpartisan, it doesn't have to try to win over supporters or voters. It is what it is. And when you look at this video, and you all have the video, we have technicians that have enhanced the video and stopped the video where you can see clearly that the window is up. There's a streak of blood on the window. It is coming down the car door, and to show that it was contemporaneous, you see Terence Crutcher lying dead on the ground with his hands still up. And this is the objective video frame that shows the window was up. So how could he be reaching into the car if the window is up and there's blood on the glass? It is very clear, even when we just try to bring attention to simply the window, you can see that it is completely up and there is blood going almost to the top of the window. So we thought it was important to address this misinformation that had been in public consumption. And again, we do not believe, regardless if the window was up or down, that this shooting was justified. This is clearly a case of excessive force. And the video is there. At this time, you will hear from Attorney DeMario Solomon Simmons, who is a close personal friend as well of the Crutcher family.
Thank you, Ben. I just want to reiterate what Ben said, that this is unjustified regardless of the fact that the window is clearly up because of the video. We watched the video and it's clear to see that Terence did not have a weapon in his hand. It's clear to see that Terence was not being belligerent. The video clearly shows that Terence has his hands up. The video clearly shows, and I like what Ben said, the video has no alternative motive. It has no political affiliation. It's not trying to make a point. So the video just shows us what happened. And what happened is that Terence had his hands up. Terence was not making he didn't make any sudden movements. The only movement that happened is when Terence was hit by the taser. And he was shortly thereafter shot. And his blood splattered on this window, on this car, and it just rolled all the way down. And it pooled as he bled out without anyone coming to his aid. That's why this is unjustified. That's why this is unnecessary and excessive force. But this video clearly shows, and the real beauty of video in daylight, it's undisputable. And at this time, I have Attorney Melvin C. Hall.
The only comment that I want to make about the undisputed evidence that the window was up was, let's back away from that, in that there was no threat posed to the officers. They were not in danger. In fact, the overwhelming force that was present there. The officers were at a safe distance away from the vehicle. There were at least 4 officers, all of whom were armed, in the video at the time. The proper thing to do would have been to maintain a perimeter and have a discussion and try to resolve whatever the issue that concerned the officers amicably and without the result of any force. So to use force, particularly lethal, excessive force under these particular circumstances was defied. It was not warranted. It was not called for. There was no exigent circumstances that existed. There was no emergency situation that existed. There was no exposure in terms of the officers being in harm's way. When he had his hands up, that's a clear indication that he was not armed, and the window to his vehicle was also up. And if you slow the video down and look at it frame by frame, you'll see that he is responding to being tased.
Now you'll hear from David Riggs.
Well, I was asked to address one issue that's been surfaced, and I'm not sure of the facts about this. I'm not sure that anybody knows for certain. It's been suggested that Mr. Crutcher was under the influence of drugs or some intoxicant, some substance at the time. We do not know if that's true or not. We're looking into that. Let's assume that it was. You have to ask yourself again, what is the proper way to handle a situation where someone is acting in a strange way and perhaps not entirely in control of his emotions or his mental state at that time? This is a textbook case of how not to treat someone in that condition. I heard just this morning, as a coincidence, a public public information announcement about being some psychiatrist was being quoted about the fact that we have such a high level of drug abuse or drug addiction in all parts of our society, top to bottom, and how until we start treating it as a condition requiring care and concern and an appropriate approach, until we start treating it as a disease, frankly, we're not going to be able to handle that condition. In no way was Mr. Crutcher, if he were under the influence of any substance, there's no way this is an appropriate way to treat him when he clearly was presenting as someone suffering from some kind of unusual mental or medical condition. We just want to put to rest the idea that there somehow that justified his being treated as a criminal who was a threat to other people. Not everybody who's under the influence of some drug is a threat to other people, and we can't begin treating everybody in our society at whichever level they might be from as someone who is a threat to the rest of us because they have a serious condition known as drug addiction. We need to make that point clear.
And before we open it up to questions and answers, just some things to point out to you. As David said, we don't know what justification, they're just suggesting things, throwing it out there to try to intellectually justify what we saw in that video as something that Terence Crutcher caused his own death. And we reject that suggestion. And as that Attorney Riggs, if we started to condemn everybody to death who might have drugs in their system, all our neighborhoods would be affected. And so we know that's not correct. So we come here and we talk about transparency. The Tulsa Police Department, as well as the mayor and the district attorney, all said they want to be transparent so the community can trust them. Well, if that is the case, then be transparent. Go ahead and disprove this misinformation out there so the public especially communities of color, will know that you're being on the up and up, and you're not trying to cover this up or sweep it under the rug or try to suggest what we saw in that video was not what we saw. We saw it with our own eyes. And so we're here in front of the courthouse, and we're going to present to the district attorney an opportunity for him, as he said, to show this family in this community that they are being transparent and they want to be very, very honest and clear about what happened here. Make no mistake about it. If this was any other citizen from the community where Mr. Crutcher lived and you had this kind of evidence, the investigation would be almost complete. And so don't continue to drag this out. Let's go ahead and bring this matter to the full transparency, the full trustworthiness of the elected officials, that the people, not only in Tulsa, but all over the world, will know that everybody is seeking the same thing, truth and justice. We will open it up for questions, and then we will visit the district attorney.
Yes, do you believe the officer should be behind bars?
I believe the officer should be held accountable based on what the evidence presents. It is very clear that only the elected district attorney can bring charges in this matter. None of us as the family attorneys or anybody else can do that. Only the elected constitutional officer can bring charges and hold the person accountable for taking the life of another. I will say this, and I'll make it clear. Several officers on the scene, none of the other officers felt the need to fire their weapons and use lethal force. And there's going to be a lot of commentary on here, but I think that is some of our best evidence as to why lethal force should not have been employed to take the life of Terence Crutcher, who only needed a helping hand. The only thing they knew when they got in was that his car had broke down. He was walking away slowly with his hands up. He was walking away really slowly. They weren't in danger. As Attorney Solomon Simmons said, it was daylight. They had multiple officers out there. He was not accused of any crime. And for the life of us, we don't know why the helicopter police officer thought that he was a big bad dude when they didn't know anything about him. But make no mistake about it, there were several things could have been done to resolve this matter less than lethal force.
When the dispatch call came in, you could maybe address this. The officer said, I have a suspect here who is refusing to raise his hands.
I'm sorry?
On the call into dispatch from Officer Shelby,
Yeah.
you hear her saying, I have a suspect who is refusing to raise his hand.
Well, clearly, as Attorney Solomon Simmons and I and the lawyers have discussed, his hands were clearly up in the video. It was clearly up. I mean, he kept them up for an extended period of time, and he's walking away slowly. And at one point, the helicopter police officer makes the statement where he has his hands up. So we don't know why she would feel that it was still non-compliance with him not putting his hands up, showing that he clearly had no weapon. And he was not moving in an aggressive manner. He was not moving quickly. And in fact, if you watch the video in real time, he is moving very slowly.
I guess I'm a little confused of whether there was some moments before the time that the helicopter shot picked him up.
Well, it really doesn't matter, because what you see on that video clearly demonstrates what happened the last moments of his life. And in fact, the witnesses that have come forward to the family have all demonstrated that they were shocked and outraged that he actually was shot. They could not believe. Their statements were very consistent before the video was released with what they saw happen on the road that day. They said he was complying, and they said, oh my God, we can't believe that they shot him. And it's not every day you see somebody shot and killed in front of you when you're on the highway, especially a person with their hands up, complying. A few more and then we're gonna, Kim.
With respect to the family and Terence Crutcher, and we're talking about transparency, one media outlet is reporting that PCP was found in his car. Have you all heard that?
Well, we don't have possession, is still in the custody of the police department, but we understand that they have put that statement out. And so we want the opportunity for the DA and the state attorney and the police department and everybody to be transparent. Don't put out stuff that would demonize him and try to make him look as if he was doing something nefarious. Hysteria out. The fact, the misinformation given about the window being down and him putting his hand in the car reaching for something is misinformation. And that's what the community wants, transparency. But let us not be thrown a red herring and to say because something was found in the car, that is justification to shoot him. You know, yesterday in America, we witnessed a person who had bombed a building and injured several people, 29 people in fact, and he wasn't taken down with lethal force. He wasn't killed. So why is an unarmed black man who has committed no crime, who only needs a hand, giving bullets in his lungs? One more.
What do you feel is the appropriate charge?
Before I answer that, I want to make it really clear that it's undisputed that the officers on the scene had no idea what may be in Terence's car. They had no idea about the previous 911 calls. At that particular moment that he was shot, he was not a suspect for any crime, period. He was not a suspect for any crime when he was shot.
But he was treated like a suspect clearly when you watch that video.
What do you feel is the appropriate charge?
Well, certainly the district attorney who has been elected here in Tulsa to represent all the citizens is very, very educated and skilled at what are the appropriate charges to bring forward when there is a crime committed. And we know this because people in our community receive that intellectual justification for bringing charges when we have far less evidence than this here. So the charges can range on a whole litany of things. It is up to him to charge the person responsible for killing Terence Crutcher with the appropriate charges for which a conviction will be sustained. But we want the prosecution to be vigorous, just as it would be vigorous if Terence Crutcher would have used lethal force on someone. And I will say, we've been talking about the leadership should be able to demonstrate leadership here. The police chief should make sure they have the policies in place that if they got body cameras, when you have interaction with citizens, when you draw weapons, you make sure those body cameras are on and that the audio is working, because we could have heard everything that transpired simply if the officers would have followed what I believe is their protocol and turn on the body cameras. Why else have them? And they didn't have the body cameras or the body microphones engaged at the time. Secondly, we need implicit bias training, and this is not just for Tulsa, this is for all over America. Because for whatever reason, the police officer made a decision that this is a big bad dude. And they should not look at citizens like that, because if every big black man is going to be looked at as a criminal and taken down with lethal force, then our society is in a lot of trouble. And thirdly, the mayor and the city leadership should not put this family through protracted litigation. They should not have them relive this tragic incident over and over again, because his 4 children now have no father. His 4 children are going to have to live for the rest of their entire lives without a father. We think the city leadership should step up and try to address how to respond responsibly to Terence Crutcher's 4 children who lost their father, and what everybody who looks at that video with an open heart says was a wrongful death.
Do you think it's possible that he
Last
speared
one.
the officer because of the helicopter noise?
Well, they can make that very transparent for us. Thank you very much. We want to meet with the district attorney. Yeah, we will.
Do any of Terrence's family want to say anything today?
Not at this time.
Okay. Can I get the spelling of you guys' names? I don't know if everybody wants to say what you're saying in the microphone.
Here you go, ma'am.
Thank you.